We will begin this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation. If you will all please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Father, we just take this time to pause and give you thanks. Today we are so thankful for the warmer temperatures, and we thank you for keeping us safe when temperatures were so cold. Thank you for the wise choices for delays, and thank you for people's patience and inconvenience. Lord, we just ask that you bless this 2018 year for the school district, for our students, and for our staff. Lord, we are entering into a time of testing and evaluation, and Lord, we just ask that you help all to be patient and to relieve anxiety for our students and for our teachers. Lord, we ask that we make good decisions for all as we deliberate this evening, and in all that we say and do, Lord, we hope that our words and our actions are pleasing to you. Amen. Okay, we have our agenda in front of us. I believe we have no changes to that agenda. And so do I have a motion to approve? Thank you, Mr. Singletary. And second, Ms. Taylor. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. So we have a couple of special recognitions this evening. And first, I would like to recognize Sarah Harmon.
Chairman Jones, Dr. Emery, and members of the board, thank you very much for having us this evening. I would like to invite Beth Puckett and Ginger Edmiston with the American Heart Association, who are going to talk about the efforts that this district has made for Jump and Hoops for Heart.
Good evening, Dr. Emery and board members. Thank you so much for the honor of speaking tonight. I appreciate all of your support with the American Heart Association and the Jump Rope for Heart and Hoops for Heart programs. I am a youth market director with the American Heart Association and would like to introduce Beth Puckett, who is new to this area and is also a youth market director with our organization. Beth and I would like to thank the 37 Winston-Salem Forsyth County schools that partner with our organization. These schools either participated in the Jump Rope for Heart or the Hoops for Heart program. Jump Rope for Heart, I'm sure as many of you know, is the American Heart Association's educational community service program that teaches students lifelong heart-healthy habits and jump rope or basketball skills. Last year, the American Heart Association was excited to present $9,300 back to your schools in the way of PE equipment, as well as providing 29 memberships to NC AFERD, and that is the Health and PE Teachers Association in North Carolina. Because of your district support, more people's lives are being saved, and we cannot thank you enough for your dedicated support. Now I would like to recognize the top 3 Jump Rope for Heart schools in the Winston-Salem district. Those top schools are, at number 3, we have Piney Grove Elementary School. Margaret Hayes is the PE teacher, and Robert Vorbroker is the principal. The number 2 Jump Rope for Heart school in the district is Clemens Elementary. Katie Camera is the PE teacher, and Wendy Brewington is their principal. And the number 1 school in the district is Louisville Elementary School. Neil Plouffe is the PE teacher, and Angie Choplin, who is also here tonight, is their principal. And as the number 1 school in the district, they get a certificate, but they also have the honor of displaying a traveling banner that will travel from school to school as the number 1, as recognition of the number 1 school. And now, the Winston-Salem Forsyth District as a whole is also to be celebrated, as they ranked 4th highest in the Jump Rope for Heart, Hoops for Heart in North Carolina. And I would like to present this award to Sarah Harmon, and she can accept it on behalf of all of the participating schools. Again, thank you all so much for your support. What you are doing makes a huge difference, and something that I always like to share, over $1 million in American Heart Association funded research is being done right here in Forsyth County. So the money that your schools are raising is essentially coming back here for life-saving research. So thank you all so much.
So before you leave, if you will come, and yes, the board would like to say thank you. At this time, I'd like to recognize Dr. Emery to recognize our 2018 P-TECH Signature Schools.
Good evening. You all may realize that we are a part of the Piedmont Triad Educational Consortium, which is the school districts that make up the Triad region of the state. And every year we are asked to select schools to feature as signature schools and lift up what they're doing. For the last 4 years, we have used a formula that really is predicated on the growth index. And so we look for an elementary and a secondary school each year that have made the most growth in that index and who have not been recognized in previous years. And so this year, we're very excited to recognize here at the board meeting those schools that we recognized in December, and many of you attended that event. And do we have the videos to play? Okay, so I'm going to do the videos and then recognize the folks. So if we could start with Louisville Elementary. This year, as opposed to folks getting up and talking a whole lot, the idea was to have a 1-minute video, and we thank the folks who are producing this this meeting tonight, because there's the same folks that help these schools put their videos together. We will put these up on our site and share them so people can see them. Thank you, Jackie.
We treat our children like they're our own. We're a community school. We all work together, our staff. Our motto is put children first. It's a team approach at Louisville. From our custodian to our cafeteria workers to our social workers to our parents, we have grandparents. We all put children first. We host events here. We work with our town hall, our mayor. We go visit the mayor. Everyone feels welcome. Our doors are always open. You'll see most days people in the hall working with children.
Stop right there. Now where's the shadow?
On the other side of there.
It's a joy to work here. It's an honor to be the principal. The teachers will tell you they're proud to work here. When they come here, they come to stay because it's like home. It's a second family.
We know that good schools and those that maintain excellence have strong leaders, and part of the joy of my day today was getting an email from Angie to say that we recognize these schools this morning with their colleagues, but one of the things that I've carried around all day was sort of the joy of hearing from Angie that when she pulls into the parking lot every morning, she gets a great sense of love and joy and thrill about how grateful she is to work in this school. And I think those are the kinds of leaders that are going to help us continue to grow this district. So Angie, on behalf of your great school, if you would come and let us recognize you.
I think that smile might say it all right there. Big smile. So on behalf of the board, we want to give you the certificate and thank you for what you're doing. And I think from the video it said it's a second family, and you can sense that when we visit Louisville. So thank you to you and your staff for all the great work that you're doing there. We just can't say thank you enough.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
And they want to shake hands. Yes.
And our secondary school this year is Reynolds High School, and we'll tee up that video. Jackie will tee up the video.
It's not hard to do.
You're watching Cable 2.
The tradition of Reynolds High School, I think, speaks for itself. I mean, with so many years having been the signature high school for Winston-Salem, I think there's been so much history here. We reflect our community probably in the best representation. We're a very diverse group of teachers and students, and I just think it's beautiful. So this is our Judy Voss Jones Art Center. About 2/3 of our students are residential, but about 1/3 of our students are magnet students. So we serve students from across the county. We have 62 discrete art courses. And so students come and they're either arts aware all the way up to arts intensive, which means they may have 1 or 2 art classes, or they may take advantage of the full range of arts classes that we offer here. I personally, every day when I drive up to work, I'm in awe that I get to work in a space this beautiful. And we have a saying here at Reynolds that we want excellent instruction in every class, every day for every student.
I don't think there's any coincidence that our Principal of the Year is also the leader at the high school that we're recognizing as a signature school. So Leslie, we're real proud of you.
How are you? So on behalf of the board, a certificate to recognize as a signature school. And help me with this motto, because I think that says it all. And I know we feel that and sense that when we visit.
Excellent instruction
Every day.
in every class for every student.
All right, and so you see that in the hallways, in the classrooms, and you just feel that in your building. So thank to you and your staff for what you're doing every day for our kids. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
And give them shakes and hugs. You hugs?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes our special recognitions this evening. Next, we would have public comments on agenda items. So we have no one signed up for that, so we'll move right into our discussion items. First up, we have a discussion by Rusty Hall. I believe Rusty's going to lead us into the elementary literacy plan.
Chairman Jones, Dr. Emery, members of the board, thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of the work we've been doing around our literacy goal over the last probably a month and a half since probably our November meeting. So one of my big rocks is MTSS and multi-tiered system of support and working through problem solving around continuous school improvement. And one of the things I share at every presentation I do is every system is perfectly aligned for the results it gets. And so that's a very powerful message in looking at where we can improve if we have that continuous improvement mindset that we all need to do. So around literacy, our goal in 2020, 90% of our third grade students will be reading on grade level, and that is fast approaching. And so feeling a sense of urgency around what can we do and what can we do differently to ensure that we reach these goals. And as you can see, as Andy has shared many times with us our data over the last several years in looking at our literacy goals, we want to get to that trajectory to where we're going to reach 90% by 2020. And so if our system is perfectly aligned for the results we get, what do we need to start doing differently to get those results? And so taking an MTSS mindset, we invited principals and instructional facilitators in for a joint meeting in November, I believe it was, to see get some feedback from them and to problem solve. So we use an ISIL model, which examines instruction, curriculum, environment, and the learner. And so we walked through to do some root cause analysis on those areas. So what in instruction, what in curriculum, what in environment are we looking at to improve core instruction in reading? And we got some great feedback, probably 20 pages worth of feedback from our principals and our instructional facilitators, and really a chance for them to collaborate together across schools to give us some ideas. And so some common themes as we problem solve, we also asked them for solutions. So what are some of the solutions that we can gather from our problem solving? And so here are some of the common themes that came out of that discussion with our principals and our instructional facilitators. In the area of instruction, looking for consistent training across the school on standards-based instruction. I think a common theme in all the success we saw last year with our growth and our schools that are making growth was real focus on standards. And so how do we provide that training across all schools? The pacing of the standards and the progression that these standards make, especially in English language arts, what can we do to improve that process? Focused training for IFs on standards, as our IFs are our instructional leaders in our building and help lead PLT meetings, and that's where those discussions happen. Reading foundations and balanced literacy training. Our folks thought that was very important. We do have a framework of balanced literacy, and so continuing that training model around that. And then reading foundations is a 5 full day long professional development that really focuses on understanding how students learn to read, is Reading Foundation. And a norming tool for across our big district on balanced literacy. What are the look-fors in balanced literacy? What can we use to gather some data in looking for that important stuff in balanced literacy? Around curriculum, which was the second area we looked at, there was a lot of discussion about the scope and sequence of the standards-based instruction, and including having prioritized standards, having aligned documents, CFAs, common formative assessments that schools all take and can report back that are in between the benchmarks, so that there's some commonality there between schools that we can use to have some great discussing. Resources is always a big topic, but vetting these resources and creating a bank of resources that are out there that don't cost incredible amounts of money, but are quality resources that teachers can use. Also looking at how can we produce some training videos, some things that IFs can use during coaching sessions to pull up and to work there. And making sure our resources matches the faces of our children and the children that we serve. I know Donald Wyatt was up here several months ago and talking about how valuable that was in his building of making sure the resources matched what his population of students looked like. And so that there are ample books for boys and for girls and for African Americans and for Hispanics, and making sure that those resources are present. And in the environment, discussion around urgency, that we don't need to just have these discussions. We need to do stuff. We need to do things about it, and an accountability. Time, flexibility. How do we conduct our master schedule to get the most amount of time we can possibly have for reading instruction? And here again, in the environment, that need for support. So it was great. We brought back all of this valuable information and have shared that out. But our instructional superintendents met and reviewed the data and looked at, okay, what are our principals asking for? What are our teachers asking for? What are our instructional facilitators asking for? So we kind of came out with a 3-step plan from January to March. Provide training in teacher-directed reading and guided reading for all third-grade teachers, providing substitutes, providing the access for principals and instructional facilitators and the teachers to be in the same training session so that they can walk away with the same information, the same understanding, the way it affects their school and their students. And we thought that was very important. It's very rare that a lot of times we get the same information to principals, to IFs, to teachers, but in separate settings. And so I thought it was very important to bring them to there. So this 3 days of training is going to be provided by ERG, Education Resource Group. But in addition to the training, we felt it was important to be able to coach these teachers and provide support for these instructional facilitators and these principals in the implementation of it. Sitting and getting a training is not enough. We've got to be in there. We've got to support. And so we're going to use central office leaders, including instructional services, instructional superintendents, to take on 3 or 4 schools and go in and with the intentionality of supporting and coaching these third-grade teachers in the implementation of what they are doing. And so those folks are going to get an additional training as well. 2 days of school visits by ERG, which is very important. They're going to help us create that walkthrough tool that principals were asking for, and they're going to go in and visit schools and see where things are going. So our 3rd day of training is going to be very responsive to what we're seeing in the schools. So if we need to spend times on X or on Y or on Z, we'll spend that time to support those schools. And then after our 3 days are up, we've asked ERG to come back and to give us kind of a evaluation using that walkthrough tool of where we stand. And so that's going to help us determine next steps. And that's also going to help us determine where we go from there and what success we saw. Schools have many things going on. With this being a district goal, schools have a large amount of efforts and resources into 3rd grade. And so there's no way to account for one thing with hopefully improved in test scores. But with some qualitative data from these walkthroughs, we'll be able to make the connection. So the coaching and training will help for principals and IF's monthly meetings. So we'll continue to use our monthly meetings that are already scheduled to continue this talk and the support of what we're doing here. Like I said, using select people in instructional services and us, instructional superintendents, to support using our coaching model. That walkthrough tool will be developed, and we'll continue to use that as we move on. And then bringing in our PLT coaches and making sure they have an understanding, so when they're coaching PLT meetings and reading instruction comes up, we're all talking the same language. We're all talking this. And it's very important, this training. I'm going to steal a phrase from my friend Amy Nail. This is going to be program agnostic, so it doesn't matter what program they're using. This is good pedagogy. This is good strategies. This is good stuff for what we are going to be working on. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Emery for just a minute because she's got some details on the budget and funding, especially as it relates to ERG that's coming up later in your agenda.
So you all received before the holidays and then again with the agenda, the sort of detailed narrative with this that outlined also the budget. So I just wanted to explain why the only thing you're seeing here tonight for approval is the ERG training contract. We froze some coaching positions at the district office level at the beginning of the year based on concerns about class size and whether we were going to need funding for teaching positions that we have not filled. So we have the dollars in Title II But in order to move them, we have to make a budget revision to the state and get the state to approve it, and then we can bring it back for a transfer. In the substitute line item, we already have budgeted in Title II funds about $22,000 of the 75 that it will take to do 3 days of subs for all of our third grade teachers. So we have enough to get started in January that's already in that line item in our Title II budget. So with the contract approval, if you support that tonight and the dollars that are already budgeted for subs, we can get started. We can get the state approval of the revision of this budget, which would move money from salaries for coaches into subs, and then we would come back and ask you to approve that use as well. The other item here that was in the budget that we shared with you are stipends for teachers in the summer. And so Rusty referenced this work on resources, exemplars, ways that teachers have easy access. One of the best examples I can give that you've seen in detail is the work that went on with the infusion curriculum and the alignment between that and the social studies standards, where teachers had easy access to literature, activities right there. And so some of this work in the summer is letting teachers put these kinds of materials together so they will be supports for other third grade teachers. We cannot use Title II money to pay for stipends. And so I got to figure out where that comes from. Do we ask the peer? So we have some time on that. We don't have to have an answer to it tonight. It remains a part of the plan. My job to figure out where can we find some support to pay for that. Because even though we have those dollars in Title II, Title II does not allow us to use those dollars for teacher stipends for this kind of curriculum work. So the contract we're asking you to approve tonight, we have some money to start off for subs. We will ask you to approve that once we get the approval from the state. We understand that's pretty much a formality to move from salaries into subs. So I just wanted you to clearly see what the sort of pathway was for funding this. This is not any new money. It's basically moving money that we already have in the district to support this plan. I'm happy to answer questions you may have about that as well.
Board questions for Rusty or Dr. Emery? Okay.
So, how did ERG come to be the one for this?
So in looking at where we were in the school year and the resources that we have, we know many of our schools and many of our instructional services folks are already committed to other areas. We've been very pleased with the work ERG has done with our teacher leaders. And so we knew that we could bring them in, and we had a session about a week ago with their presenter in adjusting and making sure that what they were presenting was what we needed, and they're very flexible and work well with us.
If I could add to that, this is a group that it's not like they have something to sell and we take it or leave it. This is a group that we can say, these are the things we really want and this is the way we need it, and they will deliver. So with the Teacher Leader Academy, Donna and Amy sat down and said, this is the way we want this to look, this is the kind of, and they delivered what we asked for. So I think the other confidence we have in using these folks is that given the time and sort of the urgency here, we have experiences that help us believe they know what they're doing with literacy and they're going to deliver what it is. Because these are very targeted parts of balanced literacy, and they're areas we know we need help in, and we don't have the time nor the resources to have somebody have their own agenda, if that makes any sense. So I think we feel really confident that they know what we're trying to do here and will deliver what we're asking for.
I was just going to say, speaking of program agnostic, I was in a training, I want to say it was last year early, where we discovered that we had lots of programs for reading. So I wondered, how are we doing as far as whittling whittling that down?
So I think for several years, we have relied on programs. And so that is part of rebooting and realigning what we do. So in theory, once we get through this, teachers will know how the proper pedagogy to teach teacher-directed reading, regardless of the resource. And so we're not going to be out there searching for different things, and as different programs come about, we will continue to add, and we can continue to make better. So the work in the summer, we're going to take the resources that we support and include those in those curriculum documents, so that the teachers start going there and feel comfortable with that.
Just one more. So are we whittling down? I mean, you know, it was a big number that we found across the district. So
I'm not the literacy specialist, so anyone in the house can correct me. But I do want to say, I think the idea here is not to tell people they cannot use those resources to support teaching the standards. To Rusty's point, we've said we're teaching Imagine It, or we're teaching American Reading Company. And really, what we do know of all this work that's gone on and sort of dissecting it is the schools that are getting the best results are teaching to the standards. And they may use pieces of Imagine It and they may use pieces of American Reading Company, but that is to supplement or to help them differentiate teaching the standards. And I think to your question, Lori, we're trying to get away from we're an Imagine It district, or we want our teachers to know how to teach the standards. We want them to have resources at their fingertips that support the teaching of those standards. But that may not mean that we don't use those resources that we already have in the district. We just use them more effectively.
And so, not to turn this into an MTSS presentation, but part of MTSS, and we've got a cohort 1 that's in their second year, we got cohort 2 that's in their first year. We're really starting to understand what core instruction is. And so I think some of these programs that have led to that list of however many we had are folks out there trying to find tier 2 interventions when we really need to be focused on core instruction. And this is helping us focus on core instruction. So I think that as we develop our list of interventions that we support and what's good core instruction, that list is gonna shrink on its own.
Marilyn, question. The walkthrough instrument, who is going to be involved in formulating that instrument? And I take it from what it says that you guys are already working on that. Do you have it complete, or?
We were exposed to the first draft of it with our meeting with ERG, and as we have a training that for our district leaders, and so as we see what the training and as that evolves, we're going to create it in partnership with ERG. And so hopefully it'll be just a paper pencil, and then we can use technology to update it, and so that it's something we can use with our smartphones as we go into the building and be able to collect that data. So it's going to be, it's not something we're going out and
Right.
looking for. It's
Good.
something we're going to create based on the training that we receive, so that we can see if the training is being implemented properly, and a tool for our coaches to provide feedback.
And so will the coaches be the ones that will use the walkthrough instrument when they come, or will principals use it
Coaches,
as well?
principals, we also talked about adding it as a piece of our district learning walks for elementary schools, so that, you know, I find value in as many eyes seeing something, you get the true picture, you know. So when I was a principal, I always found it valuable for somebody with fresh eyes to come in and see what was happening. And so I think that's going to be beneficial.
One more. So when is the next time, or the first time, we might hear a recap of how we think all this has gone?
We can send you a training schedule, and then we're happy to, you know, after we get everybody through day 1, if you'd like. I mean, I'm happy to bring you whatever you'd like. Rusty, Amy, the folks who are helping us, we could give you an update after the first training and first set of walkthroughs.
Well, I meant really like data-wise. When could we think that we might see the first, I don't know, results that net out that this is a, you know,
Well, I think we're gonna have to, so there's not gonna ever be a straight line between this A got us Z, right? But I mean, the real proof of effectiveness of this model, in my mind, is scores in
Okay.
June.
all
But
right.
I think part of what Rusty's talking about with the walkthroughs is we need to collect enough data that we can at least try to draw that line, right? If this helps us at third grade, then we wanna be replicating it at other grade levels. And I think the walkthrough data gives us some of that, you know, I don't wanna call it just anecdotal, but it gives us something to ground, did the training and the coaching, did we see that in classrooms? And then if we see it, then do we get the result, do we see some result with it?
And there'll definitely be some connection with the data of the first walk that ERG does with the walkthrough tool, and then the one they do at the end, in May. You know, so hopefully there'll be some simple growth in what we see in those two walks. As Dr. Emery said, though, that we can connect back to what we do, you know, because looking forward, you know, January to March was just the first part of our plan, and Dr. Emery shared some of that, but developing that curriculum, but then really sitting down and saying, did this model work? Is this something successful? Is this something we can replicate? Because the appetite from principals for this to work and for us to replicate it is high, especially with needs in second grade and fourth grade and other areas. You know, so I think one of the positive things is myself and all the ISs included, it's been very positive, the feedback we've gotten from principals as they've shared that message with the teachers. I've not had one negative comment come to me.
So I mean, I know most of the time, so a gain is a gain, but so the you know, you heard feedback from principals from the building, and then IS has talked and kind of came up with this. I get that, but most of the time you kind of already have some end game in mind. So this would be successful. We would consider this investment successful if we see what at the end of. So what's that kind of end number? What will success look like if we're knowing that there are needs other places? What's that kind of immediate or initial maybe benchmark? Is it so much of a,
I mean, I think for me, and I'm just speaking for me, is, you know, our score, if you look at our scores, they're flat, you know, and so I think a statistically significant jump in that, whatever it may be for this cohort of kids, is going to determine if that was successful or not, because you know, we've got to get back on that trajectory to get to 90%. And I mean, that's not going to happen in 1 year, but that trending of that way, I think, would prove a success.
It sounds like to me, and I may be totally off base, but will this help, will this really kind of break things down so that we can really focus on certain basics or certain areas of literacy that we are really deficient in, and then that we can dig deeper into those areas to develop other ways for our children to be successful in those areas? Will this help with that? I mean, it sounds like it may be a little more targeted to certain, you know, to certain competencies in literacy. Is it, or no? Am I getting something wrong there?
Well, I think this is going to help us and help our teachers keep that laser-like focus on standards, on those Common Core standards that are required to be successful. You know, so we're not getting lost, as we said, in a program or in a script.
Right.
We're focused on those standards. You know, one of our goals and one of the benefits of having principals and IFs in that same training is that this, you know, once they know better, hopefully they're going to do better. And so if an IF is sitting in a second grade PLT and they're talking about this, so some of this stuff will start permeating into everything, all our literacy instruction across the district. You know, so I think this is going to help us get there. you know, especially with those standards and that comprehension piece. Looking long-term and having some good conversations with our early learning folks, getting that reading foundations is another key that we need to get focused on with those learning to read kind of skills.
Right.
That these are going to help us with those reading to learn kind of skills in what we do, and making connections with teacher-directed reading, and making connections with guided reading, and making sure all of those are based on standards and what strategies and skills we need for those standards so that we can teach. I think right now we're seeing a lot of instruction on strategies and skills, not strategies and skills to reach that standard.
So on that question of Maryland's, and what you said, Bev, about we see some schools that do manage to make significant gains. What is a significant gain, do we think, that we would say where our goal is? Is it a 10% growth
So these
somewhere?
folks have heard me say, you know, there's nothing scientific about what I'm getting ready to tell you. We have not broken 55% on third grade reading for as long as we can go back and measure. And so in my mind, like if we got 5%, I think this would be a slam dunk. It would be, what have we done different? This is what we've done different, and if we saw that much of a result. But I would also be happy with as much as if we could take this number over 55 when we haven't done that in 10 years. To me, it would be also validation that what we did differently, because this is very different from anything we've done, had some impact. So then I think we have to evaluate how much. If you got 5%, I think you could easily say, this is a model we want to replicate, especially if you collected feedback from teachers and schools that said, this helped us. We want them to tell us that it worked too, not just a student outcome. But I think if we don't see any improvement, then I don't think we want to replicate a costly strategy, right? The idea here in doing this second semester and asking you to help us shift funds is that after we looked at our first quarter benchmark data, nothing looked different. And the idea with this group was we can't wait another year to not sort of disrupt what we're doing and try something that we haven't done before. And we've kind of been averse to pulling teachers out of classrooms and doing training during the year. One, because it's expensive to pay for subs, and two, it's a big group of people when you look at a whole grade level of teachers. But I would echo Rusty's remarks that the response to we need help and thank you, you've heard us, I think also gets us some ownership in the building level and the grade level with teachers that makes them see they're investing in me, they're trying to help me, because I also think we have kind of come to a point where we see in a lot of places that we invested in a program, we invested in maybe the resource, but not in teaching the folks how to teach the reading and give them the ability to diagnose and do a better job with that. And I'm not saying that about every teacher. I just think this is investing in people, and if we see a better result with that, I think it gives us good evidence that we need to keep investing in people versus programs.
And let me also say, this is going hand in hand with the work that the third grade teachers will be doing over the summer with developing those pacings and those standards progressions and the resources, you know. So I think they'll be more prepared to put that document together with this training behind them. And so this isn't just about training. This is about training. This is about coaching. This is about supporting documents, supporting resources, all kind of woven in together to really make a difference.
Additional questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Keisha Gabriel, principal at Kennedy High School, on the Drive Education System overview.
Good evening, Dr. Emery and members of the board. I'm really excited to be able to be here tonight to speak to you on behalf of John F. Kennedy High School. As you know, we have experienced some success in the past, and I'm telling this everywhere I go. Past 3 years in a row exceeded growth. So that's something that we're really proud of. And like the last conversation, our proposed contract with Drive Educational Consulting Group is really meant to invest in our people, not just our students, but also our staff. Our focus is on improving the overall health of our school, focusing on the building relationships with our students and making sure that our staff find our school to be a positive place to work and to be able to collaborate. We're building upon Dr. Emery's leadership and emphasizing that adult behaviors impact student achievement. So this proposal, this contract, is structured to relate to our unique goals and our unique school population, where we're going to be training our staff and also working with our students and our parents to help them to understand the connection between what we want to achieve and our progress now, helping them to feel like school is a community where they can come to learn and be able to work together. This contract will support professional development opportunities that are aligned with our district core values. They are aligned with two of our selected NC STAR indicators that relate to social and emotional learning for our students and our staff. Our work with this group has also led to us being a part of the SHAC goal process. And SHAC, if you don't already know, is a school health advisory committee that focuses on the employee wellness and overall school climate. We are actually a part of a pilot led by Dr. Simonton, where the Panorama Survey Group, they basically allowed us to have this, be a part of this initiative where we surveyed all of our students and we were able to target what specific needs those students had. So that resource is an excellent resource, but what it does is just helps us to identify the problem. Our work with this group really helps us to develop a plan that addresses each of those individual needs. So on that same token, because we are able to speak to our students' specific needs, it also supports our MTSS focus, where we're able to identify the specific supports for each of our different kids so that we can be able to improve their overall growth. The proposal is for $48,000. We've actually already done a part of this contract. It's about a little over $4,000 previously, and this was kind of our way. The contracts or our work with them started because this is my second year at Kennedy, doing some research at the school and finding out what are the things that have worked in the past to really support our community. And in the past, we've had training on perception control theory, which is the whole concept behind addressing students and staff's behavioral needs and helping them to basically be able to control their responses to outside stimuli. This has had positive results in the past, but because of turnover in the past, some of that training has been watered down. So I reached out to this group through referrals from other folks in the district, and our teachers responded extremely well to it. Actually just conducted a survey right before we left for break just to find out how impactful that work has been, and the result overall for my staff has been that this is a great resource and they really want us to be able to do some more with improving our school's climate and culture through this group. We plan to use Title I funds to be able to support this initiative. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you for the kind of the history and how it all ties in. It was a great presentation for us to see the whole picture.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we have our Finance Committee report. Vice Chairman Barr is not here this evening. He was at the committee meeting, so we basically, I'll give the report. We basically discussed two items. One, budget amendment and transfer number 2, and also the state process for the purchase of yellow school buses. So next, Ms. Lyda Calvert-Hayes with the Building and Grounds Committee report.
I wanted to bring you up briefly on where we are on buildings and grounds. As you know, a year after Forsyth County voters approved a $350 million bond, work is underway now on 16 projects at Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools. 5 projects have been put out with the bond so far, including renovation at Mount Tabor High School Stadium, construction on new joint Lawrence Paisley Schools, expansion of Conoke Elementary, and many other are in the planning or design phase. I think it's just good for you to kind of know where we are and what's going on. Also, other projects that are going on right now include technology upgrades and capital improvements for the district, which will continue throughout the 8-year bond cycle. What we did today, we talked about traffic. We're always talking about traffic. Tonight, we talked about Parkland High School traffic improvements and what we can do at Parkland, and we also talked about Northwest Boulevard. We're working with the city on that also to try to improve the traffics there, and also to make sure that our kids are safe when they're walking to and from school. We talked about Philo Hill Middle School and Brunson and the CM at risk update that we have going on right now with contractors. We talked about a coffee lease, and our board did have questions on the coffee lease, and we did have representatives to come in and answer some of the questions that we had for our coffee lease. And we're excited about this project, and we'll have more information ongoing as to what's happening with our new coffee store that'll be coming out. For our action items, we talked about Southeast Middle School. Here we go again, traffic improvements. And we also talked about some tracts of land that have been donated. So we will be taking action on that tonight also. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our discussion items for this evening, and we'll move into our action items. First, board, we have consider approval of the Education Resource Group professional development contract that Rusty and Dr. Emery talked to us about. Do I have a motion to approve? Ms. Motzinger, second. Ms. Parker, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Consider approval of the Drive Educational System professional development contract that Principal Gabriel just spoke to us about. Do I have a motion to approve? Thank you, Ms. Taylor, and second, Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Next, to consider approval of American Reading Company professional development contract. I believe this is for Easton Elementary. Do I have a motion to approve? Ms. Calvert-Hayes, and second, Ms. Taylor. Any discussion, board? All in favor? And motion carries. Next, consider approval of the PACE professional development contract. This is for Hall Woodward, and I would like to recognize Principal Jordan, principal of Hall Woodward's with us this evening. Do I have a motion to approve? Ms. Taylor, do I have a second? Mr. Johnson, any discussion? Questions? All in favor? Motion carries. Next, consider approval of the Southeast Middle School Traffic Improvement Plan. Do I have a motion to approve? Ms. Calvert-Hayes, do I have a second? Ms. Parker, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Next, consider approval of the, I think this is Sheringham, if I'm saying that correctly, Drive parcel donation. So that's great, land being donated. Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Motzinger. Do I have a second? Second. Ms. Calvert-Hayes, any discussion? All in favor? And motion carries. We have 2 items on our consent agenda this evening: approval of the minutes of the December 12th, 2017 meeting and approval of the general personnel report. Board members, at your seat, you have a new copy of some revised minutes, a few changes that were made from the minutes that you had in your board book. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. Mr. Singletary, do I have a second? Mr. Johnson, all in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we'll move to comments, public comments. I believe we have up Mr.